y'all, welcome to this video. My name is Taria and this is going to be all the books that I read from January to March. So I've read 15 books so far in the first 3 months of the year. So I don't have a Goodreads goal this year. I just set it to one book and I'm just going to read as much as I can. I'm not going to challenge myself to meet a certain number. And because of that, I actually feel like I've so far been reading a lot more books than I would have. I'm really happy with where I am right now, and I'm just gonna go ahead and just do some mini reviews for all the books that I've read. So the first book I read this year was The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This is a magical realism about an enslaved boy who has a power, and I felt like the magical realism wasn't that big of a part of the story until you got to like the middle end part. In fact, it was actually quite vague of what the power that he has even was. And then once you found out, I actually felt like it was a little bit offensive to actual enslaved people. The power that he has is this is what helps get people across in the Underground Railroad. Taking away the severity of the issue and how brave enslaved people were for doing the Underground Railroad. The fact that this book takes what would have been their strength and it just makes it like, oh, it's a part of this magical power. For me, that just didn't work for me, so I gave that book 2 stars, plus it was a little boring. X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon was the next book that I read, and that one was really good. It was a little romance. These two people who work at a radio station, and it's supposed to be like a fake dating, enemies to lovers thing. Our radio station that's going under, so the boss is like, hey, we gotta do some new show that's gonna get everybody talking. And then they decide that they're going to do this show called the X Talk, which is about 2 exes who get together and they talk about why their relationship went south. They end up, having feelings for each other and everything. But I liked both of these characters. The main character is dealing with a lot of life changes, feeling like she isn't quite where she wanted to be in life yet. I also like the love interest in this book too, so I gave this one 4.5 stars. So I got Rock, Paper, Scissors on a recommendation from Gabby Reeds, who's like my favorite booktuber, but she really liked this book. This book is a thriller about a couple who's going to stay on snowed-in, redone chapel that's made to be a house, but it seems like they both have ulterior motives. In between chapters, you get these letters that the wife has written to the husband about their relationship. She writes them every year on their anniversary, just talking about everything that they've went through for that particular year up until their anniversary. So you're getting like multiple of those because they've been together for quite a while. So it was pretty boring for me until like the middle, and then you start getting some twists and some reveals, which I thought were really unexpected. I don't know how Alice Feeney was even able to come up with those things. I feel like they were genius. I felt like there started to be too many twists. Like they were just trying to keep, like, I don't know, mind fucking you. And it was too much. I gave this one, I think, 3.5 stars. It wasn't bad. I would recommend it to people if you like to get like 16 twists at the end of a book. But for me, I didn't feel like it needed that. I actually felt like it needed a little bit more, a little bit better pacing in the first half of the book, and then I would have liked it more. After that, I read Under One Roof by Ali Hazelwood. Ali Hazelwood wrote The Love Hypothesis, which is like my favorite romance that I read last year. I gave it 5 stars. So I was really happy to hear that she announced that she was going to do a series of 3 novellas about 3 different women who are in the STEM field, and they're all friends, but they live in like different places. And it's 3 little romance novellas. So I picked up this first one, and to be completely honest, it just didn't do it for me. I think I gave it like 2 or 3 stars. It was supposed to be like an enemies to lovers because there's a forced proximity. It's 2 people who are forced to have to share this house. Something with the execution, it was a little boring. In the steamy scenes, there was a part where one of them was like, oh, I don't even like sex. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, they're gonna like stop and talk about their preferences and things. No, they didn't stop at all. They actually kept going, and then it was really awkward, and I felt like that was kind of problematic because, I mean, that person, I don't know. I didn't like that scene at all. I gave this book 2 stars. I mean, I did pay for it, and I kind of regret it, but it is what it is. So I have here Piranesi. That was the next book that I read. This one is a fantasy by Susanna Clark. This book was really good. Kind of a theme with me. It took a while for me to get into. I think it was the writing style. There would be randomly like capitalized first letters of things as if it were a title, but it wasn't a title. It was just a random word, and that kept throwing me off. A little bit before the middle of the book, and it just started picking up. So it's a book that you're gonna be confused up until like the first twist, and then everything is gonna start being pieced together bit by bit. There's a person named Piranesi. Piranesi lives in a labyrinth, a infinite labyrinth, and every day Piranesi goes exploring through the labyrinth. There's one other person alive there, and then somebody else ends up showing up, maybe, and then events unfold from there. So yeah, anyway, I gave this one 4 stars. I read The Nickel Boys. A lot of these books were read in February, and I needed to read something because I told myself that I was going to read more authors of color this year, and so that's why the first book that I read was The Water Dancer. I picked up The Nickel Boys. It had been on my TBR for over 2 years or something like that. But it's a segregated reform school for boys who have, done something bad. But turns out there's a lot of abuse that goes on in here, and in kind of alternating chapters, you're getting main guy perspective on like looking back at the school as he's an adult and seeing how that tumultuous childhood for him affects his adulthood. Anyway, I gave this one 4 stars. I felt like it was really good. Check the trigger warnings on this one for sure. I read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, and this one was also on a recommendation from Gabby Reeds. Also, Jack Edwards talked about this one too. I was not prepared for what I was going to read. It's told in email format. It's these 2 women who meet on a forum, and initially one person is like selling something to the other person, and then eventually they have a friendship that starts up. And as soon as this friendship starts up, it's like the book just takes off, because it starts to get into crazy territory where you're like, yo, what the hell? Almost like a cautionary tale about manipulation. I would certainly check the the trigger warnings on this one for sure, and I will admit that I did have some nightmares about certain things in this that just made my skin crawl. I did give this one 3.5 stars. So I read The Maid. This is by Nita Prose. A maid named Molly the maid. She has one of those personalities where she takes a lot of things very literal, and she comes off naive because of that. While she's cleaning one of her rooms at this hotel that she works at, it's like a fancy hotel, one of the people is discovered dead, and I love Molly. I would die for her. She's so pure. Yeah, I absolutely love it. The only thing for me is that once we get to the end of the book, some of the reveals and things that certain characters have done didn't seem to line up with who that character had been written to be up until that point. So that did take away quite a bit for me. So I ended up giving it about 3.5 stars, which was disappointing. Next, I read The Dating Plan, and this one was almost a DNF because I just couldn't get into it. It's a brother's best friend and kind of a second chance thing, because they knew each other from childhood, and then she got mad at him because he stood her up at prom, and then now it's 10 years later and she's still angry about it, but then they have to get fake engaged. The main guy seems like a playboy, and the girl just seemed really petty, so I don't know. I read Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but this one is a novella. It's a series starter for it's like an Afrofuturism, really cool concept of the story. But yeah, the girl's name is Binti, and she's the first of her people to be able to go to this like college studying thing. I don't know. It's a sci-fi, and I'm not well versed in sci-fi, so excuse me for really not making a lot of sense here. My favorite part about this book were the descriptions of Binti's culture. I thought that was the best part. The plot itself was not really that interesting to me, but it was a fairly short book, but it wasn't very memorable to me. I gave it 3 stars. Next, to round off Black History Month, I read The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. It's about these two enslaved men who are gay and they are together, and but then religion starts to get thrown around and they're on the plantation. I don't know, this one is one that I still have very mixed feelings about. You get their perspectives, but you also get perspectives of pretty much every enslaved person on the plantation, and I think even one or two of the non-enslaved people. I think that their relationship was very beautiful, and their chapters were overall good. I normally don't like whenever men write from the perspective of a woman because I'm very, very like super critical about it because they always get it wrong. But actually I felt in this one that maybe that's how I would feel if, you know, I was ever in that terrible position. Sexual assault in every chapter. There's every kind of sexual assault. There's, you know, men getting sexually assaulted, there's women getting sexually assaulted, and it's, I swear to you, it's in every chapter, and it wasn't bothering me at first because it is a part of the plot, that the enslaved people are forced to have to reproduce. It started out not being that graphic, and then it got more and more and more graphic, and the situations were more and more and more intense, to the point where I just felt like I'm just not enjoying this. Obviously, I don't think it's there to be enjoyable. Like, you have to show the severity of it so that people can understand, but in my opinion, I feel like if you don't understand the severity of it already, I don't think there's much that can be done just reading about it in a book. And that's my opinion. This for me was a very uncomfortable read. I felt like it got to the point where it was just unnecessary. I gave this one 3 stars. I read The Spanish Love Deception and I did not like it. I gave it a very generous 1.5 stars. I have, oh my god, it matches my nail polish. Look at that. How fun. Anyway, that's the best part of the book so far, is that it matches my nail polish. But yeah, I didn't enjoy reading this at all. It was way, way, way too long. I feel like I'm never going to read a slow burn romance again. I don't see any reason why a romance should be more than like 350 pages. The banter was not good. The story was stale as fuck. And I recommend this to no one. So I read Luster, and I have a reading vlog on that one, so I'm not going to talk too in depth about what this book was about. I also have a reading vlog on Spanish Love Deception as well. But anyway, for Luster, this one is about a young black woman who gets in this open relationship thing with this guy, or he's already in an open relationship and she becomes the third person. And it's like a millennial fiction. It's written very odd, and I think people are either gonna love that or hate that. For me, it was an adjustment. I'm glad that I read it. I feel like it explored some good themes here and there. But I don't think it's like super, super memorable. But something that is super memorable is Stuck With You by Ali Hazelwood. This is the second this is the second book in that novella series that I was telling you about. And this one was way better than the first one. I almost didn't even give this one a chance. I almost gave up on the series entirely. But I'm so glad I got with this one, because this one made perfect use of short time frame that it was given, and it was just the perfect story. They both work in the same building, and they end up meeting one day and going out for a date, and then they hook up that night, and then the next day something happens and she gets angry at him, and you don't know what that thing is. You just know that she's pissed off at him now, and it's been a few weeks, and they end up getting stuck in the elevator together, and she starts to kind of relive that whole day where they first met, and they had their first date, and they hooked up and everything. And I felt like the story was very to the point. There was times where I squealed. That's like my favorite thing. I know that a romance is gonna be good if I go, ah, oh my god, or something like that, because I don't know, it's just my excitement of wanting them to be together, or like something happens, or they kiss for the first time, or like their hands brush, and I don't know, and it just, you have to be able to build up that tension. And I felt like this book definitely did. I listened to it in one sitting while I was doing my journal, and it was perfect. I gave it 5 stars. It also does that thing, I know a lot of people hate this, where she's so tiny and he's so big. I know everybody hates that, but I don't care. I love it. So I hate to end this video on a negative note, but the last book that I read, I was so excited for this one, was The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This book is about a young woman who runs a blog called The Book of Cold Cases, and she ends up meeting this lady who in the 70s was acquitted for a double murder thing. And the lady from the 70s agrees to meet with our main character. Her name is Shay. She agrees to meet with Shay and discuss her case. So it's told in like alternating storylines as well. My problem with this book is that it gave it away halfway through. You find out what happens, and then the rest, like the second half of the book, is just you finding out what happens afterwards, and I guess the loose strings being tied up. And I am disappointed in it. I think I gave it like 2.5 stars, and I just wrote on my Goodreads, like, why would you give it away halfway through? The way that it all ended up settling was just a big letdown for me. So that's everything that I've read so far this year. Again, that was from January to March. And I am already so excited to do the next quarterly wrap up, because everything that I read in April, I feel like I just need to talk about. So if you guys want to stick around for that, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I know that's not going to come till June, but I have other bookish content that I already have uploaded and that I will be uploading soon. So thank you guys for watching all the way until this point. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and take care. Bye.